This broadcast is brought to you by Colby Brooks with Century 21 Right Pace Real Estate and buyfrombrooks.com. Let Colby Brooks handle all of your real estate needs.
Now, Stan Morris reporting.
It's good to see you, and it is noon in Northeast Arkansas. Stan Morris here with you a little bit early today, but we're doing a live stream now, and we've got a live stream tonight for supporters only starting at 7 o'clock, so don't be late for that. A federal lawsuit has been filed, and it's in relation to this Egypt debacle, the fiasco, really, we've been covering here for the last several weeks on the NEA Report. The lawsuit filed by the man who was arrested by city officials for requesting records that turned out to be forgeries, right? But not just that. The lawsuit is alleging so much more. As we go through this story, we've got a much deeper understanding of some of the experiences that Stephen Warren has had to endure since this entire situation began. It started in 2019, or at least that's when the lawsuit is really spelling it out as the beginning. Warren was arrested last year, if you don't know, disorderly conduct, after requesting records that had now, we can provably say, were forged, because the police chief admitted they were forged. I can actually show you the forgery because it's right there. There's one of them specifically. That's the radar certificate that was forged. I've showed it before. Lower right-hand corner of the screen is the fake. The top left, the one with the letters actually visible behind it, is the one that didn't have a name pasted on top of it, because that's what happened. So the lawsuit is alleging, because Stephen Warren requested these records, that his rights were violated. And it's hard to deny when you take a look at the stuff that the guy experienced. Multiple arrests. Why did that happen? And how can that be justified if the stuff he was requesting, if the people in charge didn't know there was something wrong with it? Serious questions are being raised in this. And it's not just a lawsuit right now that is against Gerald Goza, the former Egypt City Police Chief. We assume former, but we had assumed former for the past 2 months as well. This lawsuit is also, both individually and his official capacity, targeting Goza, the City of Egypt, Mayor Jerry Cook, both individually and officially, and Joy Lingo, the clerk recorder. It said Velva Joy Lingo. I'm assuming that, yeah, she goes by Joy from what I've read here, both in her individual and official capacity. So we're going to kind of sum it up, because it's a big lawsuit. We're going to tell you a lot about it, but I also want you to know, if you want to read the full thing, it's neareport.com. I've uploaded the full thing at the bottom of this story. You can go through it. Now, there is a lot of legal jargon in this. So first thing I did, got this. And I wanted to ask Mark Reese, can you explain a little bit to all of us more about this? So he did. He provided a quote to us that said, quote, "We're trying to protect the citizens, the most vulnerable people, from these overzealous, illegal police activities that the city knew and allowed." That's a quote today from Mark Reese, who was talking to us just a short time ago about this. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the lawsuit both he and Zach Morrison filed, in addition to the lawsuit that Zach Morrison had taken up for Stephen Warren last year. Because you probably remember that. If you follow the story, you may remember there was a lawsuit last year, civil lawsuit as well. That was filed just to get Stephen out of charges for disorderly conduct. 2 charges he had faced literally for requesting records, right? Pretty incredible stuff. And yet that's what happened. So the lawsuit that was filed yesterday is a different type. It's not the civil lawsuit that was filed in the state courts. This is filed in the U.S. District Court, alleging during the summer of 2019, Warren noticed Goza, then the police chief, pulling over an unusually large amount of people and writing an excessive quantity of tickets. That's what the lawsuit says. For a city of 100, how many people should be getting pulled over, being written tickets? He thought something was amiss, and so he started inquiring both about the records, about the qualifications of Goza, and he asked Mayor Cook about that. The lawsuit says Cook, out of the gate, warned him that there will be trouble for both Warren and Warren's friends if he chooses to continue to question or press the issue regarding the police department or the police chief. But Warren didn't back down. The dude is tenacious. I can tell you, I'll open up my messenger and there'll be 75 messages from him. He is persistent. You got to respect that. He also has a legal right to be. And Warren, his tenacity seemed to continue at each step of this, because he then questioned the mayor on if the mayor himself had ever told the city council about Goza having previously been fired, having civil judgments against him of that which we don't know about. The lawsuit even says there are several misdemeanor criminal convictions. We also don't know about that either. However, it states, he asked, did you tell the city council about this? The response, not good. Because at that point, Warren indicated he would inform the council if Cook did not, the mayor. And the lawsuit says that's when the defendants began a campaign of harassment, intimidation, and worse. And this is the part that should concern everybody, because it is a citizen that stood up to a government that was in the wrong. We now know they were in the wrong. That's not an opinion. That is a fact. He stood up and they attempted to ruin his life because of it. The lawsuit calls it a campaign of harassment, intimidation, and a lot more. Some of the allegations were, and I want you to think about the words that are being used in this too. He was mentally ill, according to the allegations. He was armed with guns. Mentally ill, armed with guns, a danger to the entire community, targeting City Hall and officials. That sets off immediate red flags. And speaking of red flags, it kind of makes one think of that debate in and of itself. City officials were building the case against Warren and eventually did file a legal document that was approved in court that legally, technically, did take away his right to have firearms. Now, that has since been overturned. It was a no-contact order that was issued. And I'll talk about that more in a minute, because it went farther beyond the Second Amendment, too. That no-contact order prevented Warren from being able to go to City Hall because it was issued on behalf or for Lingo, the city clerk, the mayor, and the police chief. A no-contact order for the entire city government against one of the residents of the city. Almost unheard of. And yet that legally prevented him from going back to City Hall, prevented him from making Freedom of Information Act requests. Of course, that's what he had done before that, which resulted in the arrest. I talked to you about that earlier. Now, we detailed that arrest before, and it's all out there, neareport.com. But during another 2019 incident, Warren was on his bicycle. He was at the post office, and Goza pulled up behind him, according to the lawsuit. And here's what happened. See, Warren had been arrested at City Hall for disorderly conduct for making records requests. Talked about it before. He wanted Goza to know the law. So the next time he saw him, of course, Stephen Warren had it printed out what it said, which was when an officer can make a misdemeanor arrest without a warrant. If he does not witness the crime, for example, he was told Warren was being disorderly, and Warren was not in his presence. And the video showed he was not at all. But he was arrested and had to go to jail for that and be strip searched and humiliated, have his vehicle towed. His vehicle was towed out of a city parking spot, by the way. So his taxpayer dollars funds the parking spot he was in, and the job, by the way, of both people that then decided to have it towed to Jonesboro, no less. So all this wasn't cheap for him. He had to hire a lawyer, as I've already explained, Reese Law Firm. And it didn't stop, because as I said, he's on his bicycle in a separate incident at the post office. Goza pulls up behind him. So he hands him a printout of the law, the statute about when an officer can make an arrest. He tries to hand it to him, but Goza doesn't take the papers. So according to what happened, it falls down in his lap, in Goza's lap. He's in the car. Warren And I don't know what exactly they talked about, but apparently the encounter got to the point where he walked away, and then Goza took the printout, right? He then picked it up because it's in his lap. And according to the lawsuit, drops it outside of the passenger or the driver's side window. And then tells Warren, pick it up or you're going to be arrested for littering. Now, that doesn't sound endearing, right? That's his allegation in this lawsuit. But it also continues to say Warren picked it up, didn't want to be arrested. Of course, he'd already been once. And so after that, Goza did end up handcuffing him, put him in the back of the car, and then he let him go. And then handcuffed him again and arrested him for disorderly conduct again. I know. How did this all happen? Endless stuff. It seems like, why is this police officer following this guy around on a bike at the post office? Clearly he's had issues with him before. And yet no expectation of professionalism whatsoever, it seems like, was going to be applied to this supposed law enforcement officer, who, by the way, wasn't even legally a cop the whole time. The whole time that stuff was happening, he was not a legal police officer. He did not have his GED. He did not have his high school diploma, and he had been fired for that very reason in 2010. So, of course, in 2019, how could he not know that didn't qualify? How could he not know, especially considering that Stephen Warren was requesting that very record? It would be highly improbable to suggest that, although that's technically what the Craighead County Sheriff's Department was indicating, at least until some of the, more vocal reporting pointed out the flaw in the logic there. He is, by the way, Goza, being charged with one felony for criminal impersonation of an officer. You got to wonder and ask yourself, where are charges for theft for the money? Where are charges for misuse of city equipment or city funds? Countless other questions. Fraud or forgery for the documents. Nah, guess not. Just one charge. And we'll see what that goes to court as, if it ever goes to court, or if it gets pled down to something. We'll see. Because the same prosecutor handling it's already the prosecutor that's declined to file charges the first time. So after this incident at the post office, a no-contact order was sought, and it was granted, as I told you about earlier. That kept Warren from coming within 100 yards of lingo, which effectively barred him from City Hall and council meetings. The lawsuit, and Reese told me specifically, the police in the city, they knew what they were doing and they knew it was illegal, but they continued down the path because of the revenue the city was making. And this all came back to Stephen Warren realizing that there were numbers and numbers of traffic stops and tickets in a city of 100 people. How much can that be justified? Well, it was happening constantly, apparently, but it's not happening as much now. We don't know that it is happening right now. But if anybody sees that police car out there pulling someone over, please take a photo of it. We'd love to see that. The lawsuit's alleging a First Amendment violation. You can guess why, as we've already talked about. He had that no-contact order preventing him from attending council meetings and going to City Hall. He intended to go and speak at a city council meeting, right? They went through legal means to prevent him from exercising free speech. And these are government officials, right? So that is when your boss tells you if you post something nasty on social media, that doesn't count, right? This counts because we're talking about government officials. Fourth Amendment, by seizing the plaintiff without probable cause on 2 occasions. Also alleges a Fifth Amendment and 14th Amendment violation by entry of the protective order, taking away substantial rights he held as a citizen. An Eighth Amendment violation for use of unreasonable force by Goza. It's alleged that on the multiple occasions that Goza took Warren into custody, all of which seemed to be temper moments where Goza was angry about something, it's alleged that he roughed him up each time and was he was just too physical. You don't have to be that way. If somebody's not resisting, there's zero reason why that they should need a use of force beyond what is required to put the handcuffs on, right? And it seemed as though Warren was very much aware of the law, perhaps more so than the city officials. So you have to look at the probability that he would not do something very logical along those lines. Again, it's low. And that's when it wasn't recorded. And in several instances, it was when we flat out know he wasn't being disorderly. We're also looking at allegations of a Civil Rights Act violation. Interesting thing that happened, whenever he was making a records request at the city hall, she, being Clerk Lingo, told Warren, you have to submit this request in writing. That's wrong. You don't. The Freedom of Information Act law for Arkansas is you make the request, you get the records. Verbal request or written, doesn't matter. You could hire one of those pilots to draw the request out in smoke in the sky, and that would count. Actually, I don't think that would because, well, anyway, the point is a verbal request covers it. But according to the clerk, she needed it in writing, and then she wanted to make the plaintiff write it by hand. And when he told her, I'm dyslexic, I can't, she said, do your best, according to the lawsuit. A lot of stuff you can't do here if you're a city official. There's other stuff in there as well. The Americans with Disability Act, alleging a violation, alleging assault and battery for Goza's actions. Again, he was never a police officer. And if I walk up to a random person and, twist their arms around and put them in handcuffs, I think I'm going to be charged with more than just impersonating an officer. I'll probably be charged with assault. They'll probably amp it up to aggravated assault because I was holding handcuffs. And in this case, the guy got one charge, but hey. Also false arrest, abuse of process, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The guy, Stephen Warren, said at one point he had to go stay with family members because he did not feel safe staying in this community. They were actively building a case to take the dude's guns away from him. And at one point, this no contact order was issued. First line about the no contact order prevents Warren from having firearms, in addition to preventing him from coming to the city hall, in addition to all the other stuff. So why is that important? Well, think about this. If dishonest city government officials can see someone that's catching on to their scheme and say, oh, that guy's mentally ill, he's threatening to the city, and he shouldn't have guns, let's take them all away. What do you think how do you think that could be abused worse than it was here? And we're talking about without some of the more strict requirements or laws. Somebody mentioned it's echoing bad. Hopefully they're not talking about my sound. It doesn't sound like it on this end. As I mentioned, though, several civil rights violations alleged in this. I asked Reese, I said, Mr. Reese, do you believe there's a possibility for a Second Amendment violation in this? And he said that it could always be amended into the case. So we'll see. But the lawsuit is calling for a jury trial. It looks to hold both individuals and the city responsible. It's asking for damages, attorney fees, equitable relief to basically stop this from ever happening again. And it's hard to imagine how at some level the city's not going to be severely liable for this. As far as the individuals go, we'll see. There's always the effort by city officials to petition to get themselves taken out as an individual from culpability in a case or from liability in a case. But it's possible they're going to be personally liable in addition to professionally liable. So the lawsuit, as I said, it's been filed in U.S. District Court. That is federal. That's not the same as and it's going to be heard by a federal judge. It was filed yesterday, and we're the first to break this story here. Be curious to see what the mayor, Jerry Cook, says about this, since he's named in this lawsuit. I'm sure he probably will have a similar response to the one he gave Region 8 News earlier this week when he said, quote, I'm aware of the allegations and charges against Mr. Goza. I've been advised by Rhonda Davis, our city attorney, to not comment at this time on this situation. As a small-town mayor, Freudian slip, I also have a full-time job which limits the response time on emails. That was Mayor Jerry Cook to Region 8 News earlier this week. We'll see if he has anything different to say about this or if it's sort of a similar case. where he doesn't really want to talk about it. However, he's eventually going to have to, either to the press or before a federal judge, at least if Stephen Warren's lawsuit makes it to court. And there could be more behind this, too. There could be more added to the lawsuit, and there could be other cases as well. Oh, man. If you think this Goza thing is over, some of the stuff that I've already learned today, I can't report it yet, indicates that there may be prior criminal cases that are going to have to be re-examined. Serious ones. Ones that already did make it through the court process. We already told you Prosecutor Scott Ellington had ordered all open cases with Goza involved in them dropped. Misdemeanor, whatever it is. But what about the cases that have already gone through court? Several of you asked that. Great question. We may have an answer for you sooner than later about that. So we'll keep following this story. Keep you up to date right here on NEA Report. Doing a lot of stuff talking about the court system today. Thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate it a lot. As I said earlier, we do have a live stream tonight for our supporters only. 99 cents a month. It makes local news possible because it keeps us going and stuff, and we give back a little bit every week. Special interview coming up tonight with a local media personality that you've heard and seen for a long time around here. Maybe related in a bit of a story way to one of the country music announcements that were made today. So we'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock for supporters. For everybody else, we'll be back as breaking news breaks out. That is when NEA Report breaks in. Now you're up to date from NEA Report. Thanks for joining us. I'm Stan Morris reporting live in Jonesboro.